then all of a sudden it was like God tapped me on the shoulder. He's like, hey, remember your dad died when you were 23 and how bad that was for your family? And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. And so I decided then I was going to fight. As you know, having overcome an addiction yourself, it's hard. I couldn't overcome my addictions all at once. It just because there was so much to unpack.
Take control of your life. Break the chains and rise. No more feeling powerless. No more shame. Take your power. Break out of the pain. Because it's more than fornication, more than procreation. It's not just self-stimulation. Sex energy is for creation and transformation into a new destination.
This is Porn Talk.
Porn Talk. Yeah. Change your heart from dark to light. Porn Talk. Yeah. Break free. Take back your power and rise. I said take back your power. I said take back your power. Take back your power and rise.
This is Porn Talk.
Welcome to Porn Talk. This is Powerful Eric. This show is not just about breaking addictions. It's about breaking belief systems. We are bound by self-imposed and societal chains. Break those rusty, nasty, heavy old chains and get empowered right now. Today, I have an awesome guest. We have with us the author of Tragic Hero. His goal in life is to help people realize that they don't need to hit rock bottom like he did in order to make the changes necessary to enjoy a joyful and fulfilling life. In addition to having 21 years of life and business coaching experience, he also has 24 years of sales and real estate experience, as well as 28 years of professional writing experience. He's conducted over 40,000 coaching sessions via one-on-one calls, live training sessions, group calls, and video training meetings with real estate sales professionals and other entrepreneurs across the United States and Canada. In 2021, he was nominated for Success Magazine's Success 125, one of the 125 most influential people in real estate that gets results. In September of 2022, his book, Tragic Hero, Picking Up the Pieces, was published and became a bestseller in 4 categories on Amazon. In it, he uses lessons he's learned from overcoming lifelong addictions to food, sex, pornography, and money to give others the hope and confidence they need to break through their own challenges. And next week, during the week of Thanksgiving, he's going to be a special guest on a nationally televised talk show, Times Square Today, where he'll share his story about how he overcame a life filled with terrible decisions. Welcome the author of Tragic Hero, Wally Bressler. Welcome, Wally.
And I just realized how old that makes me sound. Holy cow. Goodness, that's so crazy. Hey, Eric, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So Wally, let's get right into it. Let's get right into the addiction stuff. I mean, that's why people are listening. One of the reasons why they're listening to this. Tell us your story and about the addictions.
Sure. As with a lot of people, or probably most people, the things that kind of spurred on my addictions were things that happened when I was a kid. When you grow up in an Italian family or a family of Italian heritage, there's 3 ways you get communicated with. That would be food, getting yelled at, and getting hit. That's the 3 ways that you're communicated with. And so, it's not every way, but those are the 3 main means of getting points across.
Getting yelled at, and getting hit.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Broomsticks, wooden spoons, hands, shoes, remote controls, whatever was in reach, And so my parents, unfortunately, they had some tough times themselves growing up. My dad's mom was especially mean and nasty, very angry Sicilian woman, and so he had a tough time when he grew up. Both my parents smoked, so they were both addicted to cigarettes. They were both overweight, addicted to food. My dad also drank. So, when my parents got married, they moved from, when I was born in Brooklyn to New Hampshire. And so my mom had a job. My dad was still trying to figure things out for himself. And so he took care of me a good portion of the time when I was young. One of my punishments when I was younger, like 4, 5, 6 years old, was to be sent to bed without dinner. And so, that created within me a fear of being hungry. And then oddly enough, using that food to kind of store up because being afraid I wasn't going to eat again. So that started about a 45-year addiction to food. It was a binge eater for most of my life up to a couple of years ago. And so, I remember first grade, I had David Carradine lunchbox. Remember Kung Fu David
Absolutely.
Carradine?
I was a big kung fu fan.
Yeah, let me age both of us now. So anyway, I had a Kung Fu lunchbox, David Carradine. And I remember my very first day of first grade, they were handing out the milks for snack time. And I ate my snack and my entire lunch that day, right then and there. So I didn't have lunch at lunchtime, just afraid I wasn't going to be able to eat. And so that was basically a theme throughout my entire life. In fact, at one point I got up to 480 pounds. So
Wow.
it's pretty big.
How tall are you?
Thankfully 6'3", but still, even at 6'3", 480 pounds is still a big guy.
Yeah.
So, and then so when I was 10 years old, I was sexually abused. And so that has a huge impact on you, as you are aware. And when people are sexually abused, they either go towards sex or they go away from sex. It's kind of no middle road usually. And so I went towards sex, and that was kind of the beginning of my addiction to sex. When I was 11, I found my father's pornography magazines, and then when I was 12, I started having sex and engaging in sexual activity regularly. And then the entire time of my childhood, I was bullied pretty badly. My parents really never taught me to protect myself, had low self-esteem and whatnot. Excuse me. And so I was bullied. By the time I was 14, I was pretty much addicted to, sex and pornography and food. As I get older, and looking back at my life, I realized, we also were poor when I grew up. And I really hadn't put my finger on it, but I always had issues around money. And, I remember kids at school dressed differently. They had Levi's and Nikes and nice puffy ski coats, and they would all go skiing, and we didn't have any money for that. And then I'd even compare my lunch. I'd have like a sandwich or an apple and some crackers, and these kids would have like an entire smorgasbord of food. You know what I'm saying? Sandwiches, snack cakes. I still remember cowtails, little cowtail candies. That to this day, I've never had one. And so the kids always had those. I remember asking my mom, "Can we have those?" She's like, "No." And so, anyway, as I grew older and started working, I started, using money.
Hey, Wally, let me interrupt you for just a moment. You might appreciate this because Zig Ziglar, being in sales, one of Zig Ziglar's stories said that he said that when he was young, he always knew that he had enough food because he said when he'd ask for seconds, he'd say, "No, you've had plenty."
Yeah, right. I remember that story. Yep, you've already had enough. Okay, good, thanks. Oh, that's true. Yeah, as you see,
Right, yeah.
Big fan. So anyway, as I get older, I was using money I was basically spending money to get people to like me. And then, I've probably blown through about $5 million in my lifetime already of earnings. And so I've not used money well at all. And so, as I grew up and got older, as with all addictions, they get worse, using those addictions to assuage my pain. And, I spent most of my teenage years and my young adult life basically not having good relationships with women, just having sex with women, looking for that approval, looking for that acceptance. And by the time the emotions came in, I was pretty much ready to go because I was not ready to do anything emotionally. Used food regularly. I still remember we would go to someone's house for a buffet. I was always first at the buffet. Sex and pornography. I mean, I pretty much was addicted to pornography until, I don't know, 2000 and let's call it 16, 17. So a long time. And then, I was unfaithful to my wife 4 times with 4 other women. And, ultimately I made a lot of bad decisions as a result of that. One of which landed me in federal prison for a year.
Yeah, I saw a little of that in your book.
Yep, for mail fraud, which again, the money issue, if that makes sense, just, looking to make a lot of money. I wasn't looking to steal any money at the time, but I certainly wasn't trying to do the thing that was filled with integrity. I was looking the other way on stuff, making assumptions, asked questions, but not enough. And so, that cost me a lot more than over thousands of dollars. But, I had to go back to square one in relationships with my children. There's a convicted felon. You're limited to some of the
And
things you can do.
you were in
It's
you were in prison for over a year, right?
366 days to be
Wow.
exact. So, and then, when I got out of prison, I hadn't really dealt with anything when I was in prison. I mean, I lost a lot of weight. I lost like 140 pounds almost, but I hadn't dealt with any of the emotional things that I needed to deal with. And so when I got out of prison, kind of went back into all the same things. Does that make sense? Ended up having a relationship with somebody, and I wanted it to work so badly because I never had a good relationship, and so just wanted to be in love. And so I just looked past all the red flags. We were together for 4.5 years. She took an engagement ring from me. She wouldn't move down to Texas to be with me, and so I broke up with her. And a few days later, I found out that she had been married the entire time we were together.
Jeez.
Yeah, so she actually lived in a different state. So she was in a totally different state. And so I didn't even, and so I took everything she said at face value. Anything that seemed sketchy, I just ignored. And then that was kind of like the final bad decision in, 40 plus years of bad decisions. And so about a month later, I decided I wanted to take my own life. And, actually I was sitting in the same place. Actually, I was, sitting right here. It was a different setup then. And like, I was looking out the door of my towards the garage, and I could see the light on. And I was kind of going through my mind how I was going to do it. And I just was thinking of all these things, and everything I came up with impacted somebody else, because I can't have a gun. I'm a convicted felon,
Right.
My medicine, I was like, I didn't have enough medicine to kill myself. And I'm still a big guy at this point, 425 pounds. And so then all of a sudden it was like God tapped me on the shoulders, like, hey, remember your dad died when you were 23 and how bad that was for your family? And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. And so I decided then I was going to fight. And as you know, having overcome an addiction yourself, it's hard.
Yeah.
And so, and I didn't, I couldn't overcome my addictions all at once, just because there was so much to unpack. Picture going up to an attic you haven't been in 20 years and opening up boxes. Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, I forgot that was up here. So I was literally unpacking decades of hurt that I was hurt or hurting other people. Lots of shame and addiction, as you know, lots of pain and addiction. And so it kind of was like, the easiest one for me to give up was the sex. I just decided I wasn't just going to have indiscriminate sex with people anymore. And because that woman had broken my heart so badly, I didn't go and date anybody for almost 2.5 years. And then pornography after that, because they were most closely. And I, as my relationship with God improved, I really, because my faith was strengthening, I realized how disrespectful it was and how painful it was, and how you can't have a good relationship with God if you're doing sinful things like that. And then the money thing got better. I started making more money and doing much better with it. In fact, I was, things have been so good. I was actually to write a book and do a lot of other things because of that, because I was doing better with my money. And then really the last one is the food. And that one's the one that was been the longest. And honestly, I haven't had a binge eating issue for a couple of years, but up until a few months ago, I still have some issues with eating too much food or eating bad food. And about 2.5 months ago, I just made the decision that it had to be done. I'm 54 years old. I've got 4 kids. My dad died when I was 23 at 49. Didn't see his 50th birthday. Didn't see his 25th wedding anniversary. Missed 11 out of 12 grandkids. Missed 2 of my, my sister and my brother graduating from college. My brother graduated from high school. Just missed everything. I can't do that. So in the last 2+ months, I've lost about 50 pounds.
Right.
And really monitoring what I eat, exercising, and my mindset is vastly different than it was before. But that was the one that took the longest to overcome, because I think it'd been around the longest. So it's just, and obviously you talk a lot about mindfulness. I teach that to my clients on a regular basis, and it really is the key to reducing emotional reactivity and putting yourself in a position where when that addictive issue comes up, that you can fight and actually win. Yeah. So that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of all that. Lots of people hurt along the way. We have family members that don't talk to me anymore. I have friends that don't talk to me anymore. I filed for bankruptcy 4 times. a lot of bad,
Yeah,
lot of bad.
I can
choices.
relate to so much of what you've said. And one of the scary things is the trying to kill yourself, suicide. It seems like about every other guy that contacts me now says, "Oh, I'm considering killing myself," or I tried to kill myself." Whether it's addiction to porn, sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever, regardless, um, this is very serious. Like, we're talking about people's lives here. And so I appreciate you having the courage to tell your story, because I can guarantee that there's someone listening to this right now that is on they're teetering. They're looking for answers. So they're listening or watching this podcast. And so I appreciate you sharing your story
You're welcome.
about that. If you could maybe unpack that a little bit more, like what stopped you? Tell us a little bit more about that, if you would.
Yeah, I remember it was interesting because it was October of 19, I think, and then my uncle had knee surgery, and so I flew up to New Hampshire to spend some time with my uncle because they're getting older, And before I had left, I had hired a psychiatrist and a dietitian to help me, and then so I kind of had been working on it, and then I went to New Hampshire, and they were kind of like, "Hey, can't really help you." You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't do this over you being in New Hampshire. So and so basically I was in so much pain, Eric, that I just could not take it. I remember laying in my bedroom and laying in bed and looking at the ceiling and feeling that there was no way out. You know what I'm saying? I decided I wasn't going to hurt myself. So I felt like I have to do something because I just can't do this anymore. And anybody who has an addiction, you go through a lot of pain. That's the reason, it's funny. The reason for the addiction is pain, right? That's it, because of that pain. And I was like, I just can't do this anymore, and I was at my wit's end. And so I decided I was going to get help, and actually got fired by my psychiatrist and by my dietitian because they felt like I wasn't committed to doing what I needed to do. And I hadn't. I mean, if you've been an addict of any sort, you've seen psychiatrists, you've seen psychologists, you've seen therapists, you've seen counselors, you've paid for coaches, you've talked to all your friends. I mean, you've run the gamut. You know what I'm saying? And basically, you just weren't ready. What do they say? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so for me, I finally met somebody in July of 2020 during COVID. Interesting story. Her name's Kelly. Actually, when you read my book, I talk about her in a couple of the chapters because she literally saved my life. But it's interesting because I don't wait in line for anything. I've been impatient my whole life. You go to a restaurant, how long's the wait? If it's more than 10 or 15 minutes, I'm out. If I don't have a ticket to something, I'm not waiting in line to get in a bar. You know what I'm saying? I'm not waiting to get in line anyway. So, and I remember talking to the lady who answered the phone, and she says, "We don't have," and that was the thing, because as COVID wore on, it was exposing everybody's mental health issues. Right? I mean, the thing is, right? I mean, people are like, "Oh, COVID caused all these mental health issues." I mean, it may have in some people, but for most people, it just kind of ripped the lid off of what everybody's holding down. You know what I'm saying? Fear of losing job, fear of getting sick, fear of dying, being confined. Just created just a freaking storm. And so the people came out of the woodwork getting mental health, and she's like, "We don't have anybody right now." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I mean, I called everybody, Eric. I mean, I would say I went to the yellow pages, but there are no yellow pages anymore. So I don't know why I keep dating myself. I don't know what the problem is today, but anyway, so I called the place, and she's like, "We don't have anybody." She goes, "We have this really, really good woman who's an addiction specialist. She's awesome." She goes, "She has openings from time to time. You should just put her name down." I'm like, "Your name down?" I said, "Okay." And then literally 2 weeks later, they called me, and so I've been working with her ever since. I was doing two sessions a week for 2 years, and then we went to once a week, and now it's like twice a month, really just for some smaller things. You know what I'm saying? Just trying to, but I mean, it's just amazing. But the thing is that, at the end of the day, you have to do the work.
Absolutely. And there is a lot of work.
Yeah, and everybody can do the work. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't think anybody's ever died from mindfulness. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's ever died from mindfulness. Nobody's ever died from journaling. Nobody's ever died from affirmations or mental picturization. Nobody's ever died from any of that. You know what I'm saying? So it feels like it sometimes, And so it's tough, man. And my heart goes out to anybody who has an addiction. And it's interesting because food addiction's different because you have to have food every day.
Right.
So, while some people have addictions wrestle with wanting to go out and have a drink or wanting to go watch pornography, like I'm not comparing anything, but having a food addiction, I'm like wrestling, not as much now, but somewhat still. I'm wrestling like every hour of every
Yeah.
day of, what I'm saying? Because if you have it, like people who are addicted to porn, if they have a job, I mean, usually can't look at porn at work. If they have a job, they can't get loaded at work. I'm saying? They can't do, for the most part, right? But I work from home. My refrigerator and kitchen are right over there. So, and again, my addiction is no worse or no better than anybody else's. All I'm saying is just a different
Yeah.
fight. If that makes
Yeah.
any sense. And so
It makes total sense.
and so anyway, but I just, if anything else, I mean, I'm sure this is probably the same for you. I just want to, be an example to people of the fact that if you want to do it, no matter how old you are, no matter how bad things have been, you can
Yeah.
do it. You can really,
You
really do
can.
it. And it's, and the other thing is, and you probably realize this as well, is that it feels like it's going to be forever. But when you actually put in the time and do the work, it actually takes less time than you think it would. In fact, I mean, after 6 months, I know I was feeling measurably better. I wasn't completely where, because when I was talking to Kelly, I was literally suicidal. I did not, I'm saying, in fact, every call would end, do you think you're going to hurt yourself? And no, I don't, sometimes I'd be like, she would wait there. But, in 6 months, I felt measurably better. A year later, felt even better. And, the process of unpacking things is tough because you unpack it, it's painful, then you get some relief, but then your brain's like, okay, here's
Yeah.
more. Oh, there's more. Right? Because our brains are like, they're homeostasis mechanisms. They want clarity, they want peace, it wants understanding. It doesn't want to deal with that. We keep pushing it down with alcohol and food and sex and pornography. And then when that wears off, the brain's like, okay, let's deal with this. Oh, that pain is a signal that something needs to be dealt with. It's not, you know what I'm saying? Does that make
It
sense?
does.
And so anyway, so that's kind of, that's pretty much, one other thing I saw this online. I figured I'd check it. It's called The Bad Habit
Mhm.
Breaker. It's just a little book that I
Mhm.
got, and it's 30 days of 10 minutes of journaling in the morning and 10 minutes of journaling at night, answering a couple of questions. But I love it. It says, you have universal truths, and it asks you 3 questions. But the last one is, if I accepted that my craving or urge to do my bad habit is caused by the last time I did my bad habit, and if I do my bad habit again, I will never break this cycle.
Love
So,
it. Love it.
yeah, pretty interesting. So, I think, does that answer your
Yeah.
question? Did I give
Yeah.
you enough?
It sure
Okay.
does. And boy, you have so much experience here. One of the things you said was like, this doesn't have to, may seem like this is going to take forever. And it doesn't have to, but I would have to add to that though, depending on the path that you choose addiction help with, because I went the traditional route with a traditional therapist. Of course, they put me on antidepressants. They said I had to go to 12-step meetings, and I went to those 12-step meetings for almost 20 years with very little to show for it. And I learned that I was powerless and that um, I had a disease and that I had this for life. And I'm really into personal development, Brian Tracy, Jim Rohn, all that. And a lot of the things I was learning in the 12 step were the opposite of what I was learning in personal development. So I was really confused and it really caused a lot of trouble with me. And finally, one day I'm like, I need to find a different way. And I found this little app to use uh, about mindfulness. And just on a whim, I thought, I'm going to put my login as powerful Eric. And in
Love it.
that moment, pitiful, powerless, porn addicted Eric died and powerful Eric was born. And so, yes, it doesn't have to be forever. But in my opinion, if you take the traditional route, that is the long,
Yeah.
hard
Mhm.
road.
And it all starts with the decision. I was an English major in college, and I took a lot of Shakespeare, and was actually just trying to make sure that I had the on a sec here. the exact quote. So it's from Julius Caesar. It says, "A coward dies 1,000 times before his death, but a valiant taste of death but once." You know what I'm saying? And so it's kind of like, you can conquer your addiction in fits and starts and try and not try and try and not try and deal with all that pain, or you can finally make the decision once and for all and just gut it out and work through it, and eventually it will get better for you. You know what I'm saying? Or it can be just the most painful, excruciating thing you've ever done before. And it is pretty painful and excruciating to begin with. Don't get me wrong. But there's degrees of excruciating and painful.
Yeah.
So
I like
you know,
to use the definition, the original, the word decide, the origin of the word, it means to cut off from. So when you
yes,
decide, you are choosing to cut off from all that other stuff. And
right,
I love that. And another one of the things that you were talking about is food addiction. And so when I stopped using porn, I found a tremendous amount of anger and even rage. And also, I realized that food and sugar are my next thing to address. And actually, as we speak, I'm doing this 100-day thing. Um, and if you join my Facebook group, you can view my journey. And basically, it's a journey of getting back into physical shape. What had happened? My dad had died suddenly, and I didn't realize it, but I apparently was using food to numb, cope, and escape. And in just a matter of a couple months, I gained 25 pounds. And so this 100-day journey between now and Valentine's Day is documenting me getting back into shape. And just to be a little more specific, some guys choose to just quit the porn. Some guys choose to quit porn and masturbation. And a long time ago, I chose to raise the bar and remove both. And after my father died, I had slipped with the masturbation part of it. And so I wanted to get back on the horse with that. So this 100-day journey between now and Valentine's Day is documenting me working out and doing things like that. And
yes,
but
nice.
food, I really think, is the closest thing to a porn addiction, because drugs and alcohol are outside of ourselves. And yes, food is outside of ourselves, but we have to have food to live. So I think out of all the addictions, I don't think it's any
Mm-hmm.
coincidence that both you and I had struggles with food.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, and I hear what you're saying, and good luck on your journey. I think that's
Thank you.
amazing. I think that's awesome for you. Excuse me. It's certainly super inspiring for anybody who follows you for sure. And I just actually, while you were talking, I joined your group.
Thank you.
So, and thanks to whoever accepted me. Excuse me. But what's interesting is that you go by an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, there's a bunch of people smoking, drinking coffee. You know what I'm saying? And I think part of that is giving something up cold turkey is hard. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes we need to lean on something else as we go through it. And so and if you have a couple of addictions, they say, oh, you have an addictive personality. There's no such thing as an addictive personality. You just, excuse me, you have pain and don't have a lot of mental fortitude, don't have the skill set to be mindful or even the knowledge about what it takes to be mindful. And, I say this to my clients all the time, like when we're kids, our brains are like little savings accounts where only deposits can be made because very few parents know how to help kids extract the negative stuff and turn it into positive things. So, especially, I don't know how old you are,
52.
but no such, I'm 54. So no such thing as sexual abuse in the late 60s and early 70s. No real such thing as child abuse in the late 60s and 70s. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of those things went unwashed, if you will,
Yeah.
whatever, for a long time. So, you get yelled at as a kid, that's bad for your self-esteem. You get hit as a kid, that's bad for your self-esteem. You get, bullied that's bad for your self-esteem. There's all, and then, the terrible things people say to us, and the like you talked about, the limiting beliefs, I call them the hidden identities we create about ourselves when we think we can and can't do. They're kindling, just getting not just piled on, but then we're strengthening them by, adhering to those belief systems and avoiding things that cause us the pain and getting involved in things that mask the pain. And so we do it our entire lives, right? And so it's hard to just turn that off. So it's completely reasonable that somebody who gives up porn might want to go and pick something else up to help with that, even though you're not watching porn and you're not getting that same, chemically infused feeling. Food can do that. You know what I'm saying? Smoking can do that. Work can do that. Exercise can do that. I mean, there's so many things that can do that, but it's perfectly reasonable for somebody to go through that. I think the saving grace here is that, you have these references, when you overcome one addiction, you can use that same thought process, that same whatever, that same pattern, that same syntax to then overcome another challenge faster and easier than you did the first one.
And like I said, that is exactly what I'm doing now with the food. And something you also said earlier about having a very short attention span, like now wanting to wait. So reluctantly, I'd have to say very reluctantly, I started a TikTok account to share my journey. And oh my gosh, these videos are so, 5 seconds to 10 seconds. The long ones are 60 seconds. And we're creating a world of people that have the attention span of a gnat. And I feel for these kids, because you and I, we didn't have high speed internet. It didn't exist when we were little. And so these kids have some very, very big challenges to overcome. We've ran out of time today, but Wally will be back with us next week. If you need to reach out to Wally, you can go to where?
You can reach me at triggersalesystem.com. That's triggersalesystem.com.
Join Powerful Eric's free Facebook group, Endeavor to Quit, and take control of your life. Learn more at powerfuleric.com.